Hi, my name is Olivia Johnson, and this is Tech Demo number 3 for the case study on Mr. Jackson's 9th grade class. To start off, Mr. Jackson is a 9th grade English language arts teacher, and he teaches 4 90-minute block periods, all consisting of 15 students each. Over the past month, each student has picked a book and has been reading it independently to satisfy the Common Core standards for English language arts literacy that analyze how complex characters develop over the course of a text, interact with other characters, and advance the plot or develop the theme. Next week, they are required to provide an in-class oral presentation on how the characters of their individual books developed over the course of the book. This satisfies the Common Core standards for English language arts, which explains present information, findings, and supporting evidence clearly, concisely, and logically, such that listeners can follow the line of reasoning and the organization, development, substance, and style that are appropriate to purpose, audience, and task. This is going to be done by PowerPoint and written speaker notes on index cards. Some of the goals that Mr. Jackson has is he wants to deeply assess each standard. So he wants to deeply assess the Common Core standard 10.3, and he also wants to assess the Common Core standard 10.4. So he wants to assess how the characters develop, also how the student presents the information. He also wants the students to learn from each other and to have each student take notes during each presentation and concise it into a paper at the end of the lesson and explain how different literary themes are used throughout different novels. Next, he wants to be able to not only give a grade, but he also wants to provide detailed feedback and a summative assessment for each student after their presentation. However, he did face some challenges. The students hate it. The students find it boring and time-consuming, and they just don't like it. The next challenge that he has is he's tried to diversify in the past by using art projects instead of PowerPoint slides, or by doing different things instead of what the students don't like, but it proved to be too complicated and too difficult to grade structurally. Next, it's difficult for students to remember everything. With that many students providing a lengthy presentation, it's hard for students who are listening to remember everything to be able to write a paper at the end of it. And lastly, it takes up a lot of time because each PowerPoint presentation is lengthy and there's 15 students per class, so it takes up a lot of time, and at the end of that with 60 students, that's a lot of note cards and that's a lot of printed PowerPoint slides. So, Mr. Jackson wants to know if there's a better way, and my answer is yes, and it's Screencast-O-Matic. So we're going to take a look at it real quick, and when you go in to Screencast-O-Matic, it'll have you provide your email and create a password. It'll have you verify your email, and once you've created a free account, this is what you see. And I'm actually filming currently on Screencast-O-Matic. So this is what you see. This is everything that you can do. You can create videos, images, and you can organize them into folders and showcase them and delete them, take screenshots. This is what you have to work with. So in Mr. Jackson's case, his students are reading a book and they are to create a PowerPoint presentation and write index cards and present. But some kids find it very nerve-wracking presenting in person. So my solution is to present online. With how COVID has been going recently, everybody's been moving online, and some people like it, some people don't, but for stage fright, presenting online could be a better option. So what this tool does is it allows you to screencast your screen. So the student would create the PowerPoint slide just like they would in class, and they would give a presentation to their webcam. So much like I'm doing right now with this PowerPoint, that's exactly what the students would do. And it takes that nerve-wrackingness away because they're not presenting in front of a live audience. But Mr. Jackson is still able to deeply assess their presentation skills with their eye contact and with their hand movements and with their body language. He can still assess the way that he would in person, but the student is more comfortable because there's no live audience. So in this instance, you would click on make a recording. I can't do that right now because I'm currently filming on this web page, but you would click make a recording, and it would download to your laptop or your computer completely for free. Everything is completely free here, and you would click that, and it would download to your computer, and you just click start. And if you go down to the right corner, the bottom left corner, you can see this is what shows up, and this is all that shows up. So you can click pause and you can click stop, and that's it. And then it just starts recording, and it'll record everything on screen, and you can see at the bottom right corner that you can see my face, and you can move it, and you can change it to be minimized, half size, or full screen. Then next, you can edit your video. So if you hesitated in the middle of the video, you can just edit that out, or you can splice videos together. Now it's completely free to film videos. However, you do have to pay if you wanted to show a video on your screen, you have to pay to show the audio. However, for Mr. Jackson's case, it does not seem like that is the case at all, and they are just presenting from their book. So far, this takes care of, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. It takes care of the first two. It'll deeply assess. He can deeply assess their presentation skills, and he can deeply assess their knowledge of how the characters developed over the course of the book. Next, the two goals are students learning from each other and grade and detail feedback. So he wants us to be visible to other students. So what we do here is we can just go to channels, and you can type in the title of it. So we're going to we'll type in book report, and then you can provide a description, so what class period you're in, what your book is about, etc. And you can go and make it public, or you can make it password protected, and then you can just pick how you want your channel to look like, and then you would save it. So we'll save it like that. So now you have a channel. This is the book report channel, and you can copy the link and send it to people. And this is where you would, once you're finished with your video, you can publish it, and you can publish it to this channel, which is, we've made it public so anybody can see it. So what we would do here is, once a student is finished with their presentation, they would email it to the teacher so the teacher can see it. But if this is applied to all students in his class, each student will have an account and be able to see other students' channels and their videos because it's made public. So this is where the students are able to see, and they don't have to remember every single student's presentation, because they can just go back and watch it. So as they're typing their paper on all of the other students' presentations, as they're typing it, they can go back to each video, and if they couldn't remember he can't remember what he said at this part of his presentation, he can go back and click on the other student's video, and it's right there for him. He doesn't have to remember. So that takes care of that, because with 60 students, it's going to be very difficult for a student to remember each and every student's individual presentation and exactly what it was about, especially enough to write on a paper. But this right here takes care of that issue. And for the feedback with Mr. Jackson and his students, the student will just email the video, the screencast video, from their account, and they would just email it to the teacher, to Mr. Jackson, and Mr. Jackson is now able to provide live feedback via email. But because it's on a video, he can, just like the other students, he can go back and rewatch it and really deeply assess what that student is saying, for example, and how the student is giving the presentation. If they're making eye contact, if they're moving their hands, if they're flowing their sentences together, he can rewind it and watch it back in order to provide accurate, detailed feedback for the student, rather than trying to write it all down as the student's actively presenting in class. So this satisfies his goals of needing to deeply assess each Common Core standard it also satisfies having that student feedback for each other, as well as being able to provide a deeply detailed feedback summative assessment for each student. But there were some challenges with his original layout, and this also satisfies it. Students hate it. Students don't like the original presenting in class, but this takes care of that stage fright. This takes care of that nervousness of presenting in front of people. But it still gives Mr. Jackson the ability to still assess the presentation skills, but it gives a student a little bit more comfortability of not having to present in front of people. And next, he tried different things in the past, like artwork assignments, but again, those are very difficult to grade because they're not set in stone. This is set in stone. This is just like presenting in person, just online. And with COVID, that's kind of becoming the new normal now. So this takes care of that, as well as, just like I said earlier, it's difficult for students to remember everything, but since they have the videos right in front of them, they can rewind and they can watch the videos as they're actively writing instead of having to rush and take notes in class while listening to the students. And lastly, watching these videos in class takes a lot of time and a lot of time away from the teacher to actually teach. So this takes no time at all. They would just do this. Mr. Jackson could give this assignment in class or assign it as homework, but if his issue is having no time in class, then he can assign it for homework, and these students can watch these videos at home for homework and write their paper at home for homework, and it takes no time away from in-class teaching. And finally, the clutter. He was having an issue with all of the index cards for in-person presentations piling up on his desk, but what the student can do is they can type up their presentation notes on a Word document or on the bottom of their PowerPoint slide, and it's right there for him to see, and it's digital, so it doesn't pile up on his desk and it doesn't create clutter. So all in all, Mr. Jackson had a lot of issues with his in-class book report presentation because students didn't like it. They got nervous presenting in front of people, and it took up a lot of time and it had a lot of clutter, and he wanted to be able to still deeply assess their presentation skills and their knowledge of how the characters developed throughout their books, but it was hard to do it in person because they're speaking really fast, and it's hard to accurately and fairly assess the individual when you're trying to rush and take notes. But this Screencast-O-Matic takes care of that because they will just create a PowerPoint like they would normally do, and they would give the presentation to the webcam. And on Screencast-O-Matic, you're able to see their screen and you're able to see the PowerPoint just like you would in person. But again, it takes away the scariness of presenting in front of people, and you can still see their face and how they would present in person, so he's still able to accurately assess the individual on their presentation skills as well as their knowledge. And for students who need to take notes on other students' presentations to create their final paper, the students are able to go back and rewind and watch each video so they can accurately write their paper without having to forget things and without having to email Mr. Jackson to ask him what a student said, or without leaving out information. They're able to watch it while they write their paper. So Mr. Jackson was looking for a better solution to his book report, and there is, and it's called Screencast-O-Matic.